Hi, welcome back. My name is Kari Waltz. I love to share tips, tools, and techniques that have helped me on my art journey. And I've just returned from a couple of trips where I've done some journaling and some plein air painting. And I wanted to share with you some things that were successful and some things that might not have gone so well. And hopefully you will learn from either my mistakes or my successes. So stay tuned. If you followed me for any length of time, you will know that most of my journals are small. This is the size I usually work in, and I do have one like this, but I have decided recently to shift to this on occasion to practice and learn other things. So here we go. In this journal, I'm going to give myself permission to play, experiment with watercolors, gouache, pen, and anything else that appeals to me on that particular day. So this is not a travel journal like normal. It is just one where I'm going to learn, I'm going to experiment, I'm going to try things. There is no agenda on documenting anything specifically. So, trying to do I put a frame around it? Do I not? To frame or not to frame? That is the question. This was before my trip. I'm going to be traveling to Hilton Head soon, and therefore I started doing something kind of sea-like and pretending that. But I'm even trying, do I paint first and then pen, or do I draw that with pen and then paint? I'm just experimenting. I won't go through all the detail of what I wrote, but just trying to capture more realistic work. And then I was going to do the turtle again in different colors. But plein air painting this past week in Blue Ridge, Georgia, part of what I did was just sit under a tree in the park, and I just tried to capture movement of people, and I need a lot of practice. So that practice will continue. I took a trip with my family to Darien, Georgia, and the owner of the house we rented was a photographer, and these two paintings were done from the inspiration of some of the photography that was in that house. I was in Blue Ridge, Georgia this weekend participating in the Blue Ridge Mountain Art Association Plein Air International Paint Out, and I was down by the river with Marcia Savage, and we were painting. This one was done in watercolor and gouache, and including a pen on the speckles of the water. And then I attempted to paint her while she was painting, and that was a challenge. However, I couldn't use either of these in the competition because I did not get a stamp or sticker before I painted. And I wasn't really planning on using those, but they turned out, well, at least I love the birds. But if you want to compete in a plein air event, you must get the paper stamped. So here's the stamp and the sticker. So my goal this past week was not really to participate in the competition. My goal was to participate in the process, to be outdoors, to explore things. Now, this is a little weird, but I sat down after I'd painted those birds, and I said, I'm just going to paint what hits me and just experiment. And lo and behold, I sat down, and all of a sudden the outside edge of my shadow fell onto this paper. And of course, it's a lot bigger paper than I normally paint on, but I thought, I just got to paint that. So I call this me and my shadow. And I write about how that sparked creativity, and I just threw in a few features so that you could tell what it was. And I realized if I'm going to paint big, I'd better mix more paint, because to get the paint flowing and shift it soft edges into soft edges for a wet on wet technique, it was drying too fast. So that's okay. I learned something there. So if you're going to do something large, pre-mix puddles of paint. Be open to inspiration, even if it's a little off the wall. So since I had something that was decent and could have been entered in the show, I decided to go back to the Art Association and get a couple of pages stamped. I think I have 3. So the next day, I went downtown with the intent of painting people. And I saw a bunch of men up at the corner of the street. They were sweeping and scraping and doing all sorts of things. So I parked myself in under a beautiful shade tree, and I sketched out the machinery and was about to sketch out the men and bring my painting this way. And then all the men left. They got in other machinery pickup trucks or just walked off the scene. So darn it, just like plein air painting, you never know what might change in the scene. So I hadn't finished painting this, but I had enough of it in there. And then the only thing left was the street and a couple of signs. And I thought, well, that's kind of boring. So I decided then just to paint the house that was behind the scene and just kind of incorporate that. And I titled it All in a Day's Work. So no, it was kind of funny. But again, plein air painting was the challenge of capturing something that's there, going with the flow when your scene changes, and architecture is always a challenge. So I thought, oh, why not? But again, the problem that I had when I decided, oh, I could compete with this, is I didn't pay attention to the size it was when I sketched it out. Because originally I was going to start here and come this way. And when I work in my journals, because most of the time, well, I'm not planning on framing them, I don't pay attention to the border edge. Now, I had drawn the border edge on this one. I actually taped around it because I hadn't done that in a while, and I was experimenting, and I thought, I'm going to see if I like that. So I did like the clean edge. That controls, I did the same thing here. That controls that, but I don't always do that. I didn't want to be that specific, so I'll come back to that one in a minute. But again, if you want to compete, you have to have it stamped on the back. You need to pay attention to how big the piece is, and I do want to include how those soft edges, because if I had competed with it, I would have had to cut off some of the picture. It would have been a 5x7, which was small, and it would have crowded it up here by the time you mat it. So think about that. Well, the next one, there aren't any people in this one, so I thought, well, I'll go to the train station. So I went down to the train, and Marcia said, well, if the train leaves today, you have 20 minutes. So I quickly sketched in the shape of the train, what I had, felt like I had enough information, and I did take a photograph just in case it left. And I realized, okay, it's 4:05. The train hasn't left. Yay, but all the people did. Darn it. So I just worked from my photo, and I'll try to superimpose that in the image here and just push back the darks, make them even darker. I use gouache and watercolor in this. And this was a great example of a vanishing point and linear perspective. That was a good challenge. Now, I did have an issue with the railing because when I painted it originally, it didn't show because you can barely see this yellow over that gray because you can't save the whites very well when it's that tiny. So that's when I did go back with my opaque pen. It's a small gel pen that I can draw the lines and let them dry. And then I came back over with the yellow paint. So it looks clean and shows up really well. Again, I had the issues. Ooh, I really like this piece. Actually, Marcia loved it. And, but it's not the right size. Walmart was the only place I could have gone to get a frame. And they have the traditional 5x7, 8x10. But this paper is 9x12, and it's 9 this way. So 10, it wouldn't have been right. And so, needless to say, it was not entered in the show. I would have loved to enter it in the show, but I didn't plan because I wasn't planning on competing. So, sometimes you change your mind. You compete anyway. I wasn't planning on competing, but I did do 2 oil paintings that I entered. And they are still at the show. This was another quick watercolor that I did of Mercier, I think is how you pronounce it, Orchard. And I came back the next day and painted this again in oil. It was quite fun. So I hope you learned a little bit from my adventures in larger watercolor. You can tape off your edges if you'd like. You can practice people if you want. Be patient with yourself. It's not an easy thing. And if you're going to compete, know what size of paper or frame you need, because you have to have it framed and ready for hanging if you compete in a show. And it just didn't work out for me, but I kind of like them in my journal. I have a hard time taking things out of a journal, and this one I could take out because it's spiral. But most of my journals are bound. But I think that was my favorite one of the week, and here it is in my journal. I also am going to include a little bit of the oil painting that I did, and again, the effects of not planning ahead. So enjoy the last bit clip that I'm going to include, and y'all have a wonderful week, and I will see you soon.
Hi there, I am doing something totally out of character for me. I just swung by the apple Mercier orchard to take a look at the view, and I said, oh, I'm going to paint. I am so not ready to paint. I don't even have a hat. So I am parked up under the back of my car, hatch lifted up, and I have a metal panel that's I taped to this taller one, and that's the view I see. I don't even have a large palette to mix on, so I grabbed one of my tins and put some colors in it, and I'm just going to hold this, and I'm going to attempt to paint that view as quickly as possible. I cannot believe I didn't bring a hat. What is wrong with me? Anyway, I wasn't planning on painting. I was on my way to Walmart to pick up a lamp, and I just stopped. Hello. You just should always have what you need in the car to paint from. So hopefully you'll see something worthwhile when I'm through. Bye. Okay, I just brought it out in the sun. I think I'm through. I painted it with these 3 brushes, my little scruffy brush, a little bitty size 4, I think, flat brush, and I signed it with my wipeout tool. I don't know if you can, there you go, if I get my name in the light. And considering my palette was an Altoid size 10, I think I'm pretty happy with it. I've learned a couple of things. First of all, always have a hat in your car. I didn't have one, and my hair was in my face, and it was a little awkward. But, you know, I just plowed through it, and I was having fun, and I'm happy with it. It's different from anything I've done. It's on the aluminum panel again, and I'm having so much fun with those because there were a couple of times where I just, well, let me flip it. Out right there was a tree, and at one point I had it in here, and you know, it just didn't help the painting, so I just got a paper towel, wiped it out, and left it out. The grass isn't quite this golden yellow, but I wanted it warmer than what was back there, so I added some of the yellow, green, and a bit of orange undertones in there to warm that up. And the house down there, pump house, whatever it is more in the sun now than it was, but I'm not going to chase that. That's just something I just can't. If I change that, I'm going to have to change a lot of other things. So anyway, I will take it inside and take a picture of it out of the sun and see how it goes. But I really love the brush strokes that I get when I work on the aluminum panels. So tell me what you think.